Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's virtual event. I'm Joseph Davis with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Now, just a bit, we'll have a conversation about how to expand work-based learning to create opportunity and prepare the workforce of tomorrow. Now, work-based learning connects education to real jobs in real ways. It benefits learners and it delivers real value for employers, yet access to quality work-based learning remains limited. And employers often face real barriers to getting started. According to a 2024 employer survey, nearly half of employers face operational challenges running internships. These challenges include staffing, supervision, and sourcing qualified candidates. Today, we'll focus on what's holding employers back and how to remove those barriers. We'll take a closer look at the role intermediaries play behind the scenes, and we'll share practical insights and resources you can use after today's event. Now, we want this to be interactive, so be sure to use the Slido feature on your device to share questions, comments, and participate in our polls throughout the day. So, let's get started. Welcome back, and I am joined by my lovely colleague, Sarah Castro with the U.S. Chamber Foundation. Sarah, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Before we dive in, so I want to do a little bit of level setting. So if you could, for folks that may not be familiar watching us, can you tell us, maybe define work-based learning for us?
Yes, so when I think about work-based learning, I'm thinking about the experiences that are connecting traditional school learning with real work experiences. Mm-hmm. So these experiences are giving learners the opportunity to really explore what types of careers and jobs are out there. Mm-hmm. They're also giving learners the opportunity to prepare for jobs and build job skills. And then they're also giving learners really the opportunity to build their durable skills and soft skills and get an understanding of the professional expectations that are so important once they do enter the workforce. And so we really see work-based learning as very impactful experiences. They are typically hands-on experiences, they're workplace focused, they're employer guided, and the types of work-based learning experiences that most people tend to be the most familiar with are internships, apprenticeships, job shadowing, co-op programs, and things like that.
Got it. So I heard skills building, creating opportunity, which kind of brings me to an initiative from the U.S. Chamber Foundation, EPIC, and we've been doing this now for a couple years. Can you tell us a little bit, for folks that may not be familiar with it, what EPIC is and maybe some of the work that's been done?
Yes, so EPIC stands for Employer Provided Innovation Challenges, and EPIC is really the Chamber Foundation's solution for scaling these work-based learning opportunities. EPIC is really a project-based learning focus, which is a type of work-based learning. Okay. And what EPIC does is it provides high school students and post-secondary students with the opportunity to work on real-world business challenges. And these challenges are typically about 4 to 8 weeks in length. Okay. The way we have been going about scaling EPIC is by working with, standing up really, what we call EPIC clearinghouses. And these EPIC clearinghouses are typically state or local chambers of commerce, so they're organizations with deep ties in their communities. And so what we ask these EPIC clearinghouses to do is to recruit the employer partners who are providing those real-world business challenges, and then they also recruit the education partners who are providing the teams of learners who are working to solve those business challenges.
Got it.
And so with those relationships that the clearinghouses bring us, and then the Chamber Foundation's really standardized framework for building out these business challenges, EPIC really removes a lot of the barriers that our partners would typically face when trying to stand up work-based learning in their own communities.
Got it. Now, you mentioned the goal of scaling the program. So I guess I'll get to the why. Why is work-based learning important for the Chamber Foundation?
Yes, so well, one thing we know about work-based learning is that students and learners are really eager to take part in these, types of opportunities, but there simply aren't enough high-quality employer challenges, work-based learning opportunities to meet the demand of all the students who are interested in participating in one of these opportunities.
Okay.
And not only that, they also are typically not always available to a broader range of students and opportunity populations. So we're really focused on scaling the opportunities and then increasing the access of the opportunities as well.
Got it. So looking forward this year, beyond this year, maybe tell us something you're excited about for the program.
Yes, so we are definitely excited about continuing to work with a broad population of learners and watching them go through these challenges and get all that experience, career preparation, career awareness, and then of course also having our EPIC learners receive the digital credential, the digital badge from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation once they successfully complete an EPIC challenge.
Got it. So they get the experience and then they get an actual credential noting that they went through this experience and built those skills. Can you tell us a little bit more about the credential? I mean, it's a big deal to, one, get the experience, but also walk away with something that you can show future employers.
Yeah, so it is a big deal. And with EPIC, we are working with a broad range of employer partners. So we're working with employers of all sizes, of all industry. So through EPIC, we have employer partners who represent mom and pop shops to Fortune 500 companies. We have nonprofits as our employers. Municipalities have served as our employer partners. And then also the challenges that the students and learners are working on through EPIC also really run the gamut for the types of problems that they're working on. So our EPIC challenges, topic-wise, can be cybersecurity, information technology, marketing, communication, supply chain management, really all types of employers and all types of employer challenges. But the common thread that is running through all of our EPIC challenges is really the soft skills or the durable skills that our students are getting by doing one of these EPIC challenges. So we really just continue to be excited to give students the opportunity to have these work-based learning experiences, but then also have a credential that sort of signals to future schools, future employers, that they've had this real world work experience with a real employer and really honed in on the durable skills that will be so important for them as they do enter the workforce.
That's great. And as a colleague, I'm definitely excited to see where we go from here. And I'll say a shameless plug. If you do want to see some great examples of EPIC and what we've been doing with the challenges, you can definitely find that on the Chamber Foundation's website. There's some great case studies. So I have to throw in the shameless plug to let folks know, like, we can actually show you some examples of this, like, working. Sarah, thanks so much for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll be back in just a minute. We're going to talk the macro view with the K-12 focus next. We are back, and now I'm joined by Liz Texera from Britebound. Liz, I know we're going to get into the good stuff, but I can't help myself as a communications professional. I want to talk about a recent rebrand your organization went through. Can you talk a little bit about it and how that kind of connects the work you're doing right now?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us today. New mission, same mission, new name. So again, we are still offering digital first experiences for young people. We have national advocacy work happening, research, philanthropy, impact investing. But this new brand was really an intentional opportunity for us to make sure that we are connecting with people where they're at. This signal of Britebound, we know that our young people are bound for great things and bright futures. We wanted to make sure that we are giving them opportunities to find their why, but also find their way. And that's a huge part of work-based learning.
That's great. That's great. I love a rebrand.
Love a rebrand.
Love a rebrand. Getting into it, and I guess kind of looking at it from a broad view, why does quality work-based learning matter at all?
Yes. So as we heard, again, Sarah talk about, work-based learning is such an important bridge to connecting the student learning experience in a K-12 setting to what the future of their career will look like. We need to make sure that they are both prepared and passionate for the careers they ultimately want to land in. And in order to do that, quality matters. Right now in the K-12 setting, we have not actually figured out how to standardize work-based learning. Okay. Our data shows us that we have about 41 states who are currently tracking work-based learning at some level, but only 26 states are actually reporting on work-based learning for federal Perkins reporting requirements, for example. Out of that group, only 6 actually have any sort of accountability metric or measure. When you can't measure something, it's really difficult to actually focus on how to improve student outcomes and opportunities and to make the system better. So we know that quality is incredibly important because a young person in one state might be doing an internship at 100 hours, whereas a student in another state might be taking an internship at 200 hours. The differences in those experiences, we're not sure if it's time-bound, we're not sure what it is, but we know that we have to do a better job of figuring out how to standardize the quality of an experience.
Got it. Now, thinking about employers, why are they essential in this work-based learning effort, in any effort?
Absolutely. Employers really need to be helping us drive the conversation in K-12. If you ever worked in K-12 or been associated with K-12, and most of us are, we can be slower to move. Right? Employers really have the pulse on what is happening at the national level, what the economy needs, what types of work is actually coming down the pipe. If you are in the K-12 setting right now as an educator, a counselor, a building administrator, you are less familiar with, again, what the world of work looks like and how it's evolving. We need employer voice so much in this conversation to help guide our young people, but also to guide the K-12 system to figure out how are we adapting to this new world? How do we actually adapt to the future of work? Work-based learning is how we let young people do that. We need employers to help us figure out how to make that system possible for our young people.
Got it. At Britebound, so you work with a ton of employers, of course, a lot of organizations, individuals that benefit from work-based learning. And I know this is kind of a tough question, but who's doing it well? Like any examples of folks that are really standing up work-based learning and it's working?
We have the great, I think, privilege at Britebound of funding organizations across the country who are doing this work incredibly well. So I'm going to rattle off a couple of different names here, but at the end of the day, we have a tool actually called CareerReadyHQ, and you can actually go on there and see all of the different organizations and entities that Britebound is currently funding. That's because we know some of these models that are working. No one has to start from scratch. We can all kind of take advantage of each other's learnings. So some people that we really appreciate and that we know are doing work-based learning quite well. We've got groups like the CAPS Network. We've got Uncommon Construction. We have Jobs for America's Graduates. We have Teamship, GPS Education Partners, Partners for Youth with Disabilities. We've got Empower Schools, Big Picture Learning, the Work-Based Learning Alliance, Colorado Succeeds. There are so many. Again, there are pockets of excellence all over this country of people figuring out how to make sure that young people are actually getting connected to careers that they are passionate about and that are actually able to get well prepared for. Work-based learning is kind of that secret sauce, and again, we know a lot of the people who are doing it well.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks for doing this with me now.
Absolutely.
I know this isn't goodbye. It's literally I'll see you later in about 20 minutes. So we'll have you back. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back and we'll talk macro view from the post-secondary focus. joined now by Laura Love. I want to get into it, Laura, about looking at it from post-secondary focus, work-based learning. And I guess it's safe to say work-based learning is having a moment right now. Thinking about federal legislation, thinking about more governors across the country supporting it. But why now? So what's special about this moment?
First of all, thank you so much for having us. Wonderful to be here. And I think that our research at Strada, our focus at Strada is really connecting post-secondary education to opportunity and employment. And we are really motivated by our research and the research of others showing that work-based learning is one of the most important predictors of a college student's success after graduation. So our research shows that participating in even one paid internship leads to improved outcomes, so less underemployment, higher wages, and that's kind of a sticky outcome that stays with students over time, 10 plus years.
Okay.
So I think there's increased recognition about that data and those outcomes now that we have evidence. Work-based learning, of course, isn't new, right? It's not a new concept. We've had apprenticeship for literally centuries. But I think over the past few decades, as we've really focused on increased access and college attainment, which is a really important mission, the reality is a lot of college takes place in the classroom still.
Okay.
And I think we've had more and more recognition that students, sometimes graduate and are not necessarily ready to enter the workplace, right? And that I'm sure all of us, when we think about how we know what we know, we think back on work experiences, right? Maybe more so than the classroom. And so as we've heard from employers about their entry-level workers and the skills that they're coming in with, I think we're seeing greater recognition that the best way to actually be ready for work and to come in with both the technical skills, but also the durable skills and professional skills, is to actually have been in the workplace and to have participated in something like a paid internship or an EPIC project or a co-op in a way that the classroom environment alone can't necessarily replicate. And so I agree. I think we're having a moment in work-based learning, and it's really exciting to see the energy and the sort of increased focus at the policy level, as well as among institutions of higher education. I think there's a lot of bright spots. I know, as you and Liz were talking about bright spots, a lot of institutions and systems of higher education that are focused on prioritizing work-based learning. And I think the conversation is now about how do we get every student access to a quality work-based learning experience, and move beyond sort of some students might get it and others don't get it. How do we move to every student? And that's what we're focused on at Strada as well.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about intermediaries. So first, of course, I'll have to ask you to define it for the folks that may not know. And then I want to get into a little bit of the thought leadership that your organization put out recently around intermediaries. But first, can you define intermediary?
So very broad term, but I think in this context, when we think about education and workforce, an intermediary is really any entity that is connecting employers and talent providers or talent themselves. And so, EPIC and all of the sort of chambers that are part of EPIC are intermediaries. They're like working to connect employers and talent. And I think when we think about getting to scale and getting to every student, we know that employers need a lot of support, a lot of help, especially small and medium-sized companies, to actually stand up and operationalize work-based learning. And so intermediaries, we know, play a critical role in helping with, kind of making it easier, simplifying the process, and engaging employers in apprenticeship, in internship, and making it easier for them to kind of navigate the system. And so, but we still, I think, have a lot of questions around what exactly is the role of an intermediary, and that led us to bring together a sort of a working group to try to convene and sort of coalesce around, we know that these are important entities, but what exactly is the role that they play? What are the core functions and core competencies of an intermediary? And so as you mentioned, we recently published a report on the topic, which is sort of the culmination of this working group's advice, and we define 5 core functions of intermediaries. And this is sort of like, what are the building blocks of becoming an intermediary? And I'll just talk through those if we could. So the first is employer engagement, which is really just all about building relationships, the outreach of connecting with employers, understanding their needs, and really building that set of partners. Then we have solutions design. So this is all about kind of doing a talent needs assessment with companies and co-designing the right solution. So apprenticeship might be the right solution for some companies, not others. And so how do you kind of, again, listen and really build solutions in a way that meets an employer's needs? Then we have solutions brokering. And so this is, you know, once you've decided on the right fit model, who are the right partners? And how do you serve as a broker to connect companies with the talent, you know, sort of providers that are going to meet their needs? And then the last 2 categories are really all about operations. And so we have implementation support, which is about helping companies write the job descriptions, helping them decide what is the right work task for an intern or for an apprentice. So what is the appropriate work to assign them? How do you prepare your manager? So all of those kind of brass tacks around implementation. And then we have a 5th category, administrative support, which is more about sort of data reporting, you know, particularly important for apprenticeship, because it does involve, you know, some paperwork and some compliance. And so that's kind of the final category. And, you know, our goal is really to shed light on the important competencies of intermediaries, and also to say that lots of different kinds of organizations can do this work, right? Community colleges, chambers, of course, workforce boards. So it's less about what type of organization is an intermediary and more about what do they do, and that's what we're hoping to shed light on in this report.
That's great. And thinking about the research you've done, your role, is there anything in this brief that kind of, as you were developing and doing the research behind it, anything stand out for you or kind of surprise you in looking at the role of intermediaries?
Well, that point that I was just talking about was a really interesting one, which was it's not one type of organization in our country that does this. It's actually a pretty diverse set of organizations. Even 4-year institutions, if you think about, you know, career services at its best, that's intermediating. That is inventorying, you know, needs of employers and connecting with students. I think we have not standardized or really created kind of standards and thought about how do we scale these functions? How do we make sure that every employer in every geography sort of knows who to go to for these kinds of services? But I think that was a really interesting learning was, you know, it's not only workforce boards or only one type of organization. It's actually a lot of different organizations playing this role, but we need better guidance on how to do it effectively and what does best practice look like.
Got it. And I know you'll be coming back a little bit later too, and we're going to talk barriers and also solutions around intermediaries and work-based learning in general. So I will see you again soon as well. But thanks for doing this. And we'll be right back, and we'll actually talk to some intermediaries about their experience around work-based learning. Back. I'm joined now by Susie Lance and Judy Spitz, who's joining us virtually. And Susie, I'm going to start with you. I want to jump in and talk about your experience as an intermediary. So I know you've been working with our EPIC initiative for some time. So talk a little bit about your work and your role, and then also the connection to work-based learning.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. I'm Susie Lance. I'm with the San Clemente, California Chamber of Commerce. We are a chamber of about 460 members, and we're located in Southern California. We have a community of about 63,000, and we have been working in the workforce space for probably about 4 to 5 years. Understanding that chambers of commerce are truly in the business of helping to solve our businesses and our community's biggest challenges. We were fortunately introduced to the EPIC program through our membership with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and we did have an existing workforce program going inside of our high school, but when we learned about the EPIC program, it was absolutely what we needed to really put the icing on the cake for the existing program that we had. Getting the students really highlighted and directly in front of the employers in a presentation format was it was really exciting to see.
That's great. That's great. And Judy, I'll ask you the same question. Tell us a little bit about your role in your work at Breakthrough Tech, and then your connection to work-based learning.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and I just want to start by saying it's an honor to participate in this important conversation. Breakthrough Tech is a nationally based nonprofit intermediary that's approaching our 10th year, and we are focused on expanding access to high-growth careers in tech and AI in particular. And our work is focused on what we describe as a broken supply chain at that intersection between academia and industry. And we work in particular with learners who have extraordinary potential to have successful careers in the tech ecosystem, but more often than not are overlooked by the hiring engines of industry, either or both because they go to schools and universities that are just not the target for recruitment for these companies, but also because they're lacking that critical applied work-based learning experience that we know allows them to more effectively compete. I agree with the comment made earlier that having a work-based learning experience on your resume is the single most important and powerful lever that we have to level the playing field for these students who, more often than not, end up underemployed in spite of the education that they have. And the proof is in the pudding. We've been designing and delivering innovative programs that can be considered work-based learning, including our 3-week micro-internship that we call a Sprinternship, and our AI program that is now the nation's largest talent accelerator of its kind. And the results show, with thousands upon thousands of students, that having these work-based learning experiences on their resumes increases our fellows, as we call them, success in landing a paid internship or job by 10-fold. The results show 70 to 85% of our students are landing these critical experiences compared to about 30% as a national average. The challenge right now, and I heard a comment earlier, is that we are at this critical moment where, in large part because of AI, work-based learning and applied experience is no longer a nice-to-have or a programmatic add-on. It's actually a prerequisite for getting an entry-level job. And we know that there simply aren't enough of them to go around. You've heard people mention repeatedly the 2 or 3 tools in the tool chest: an internship, an apprenticeship, a co-op experience. There aren't enough of them to go around, and so in addition to delivering programs, Breakthrough Tech is focused on innovating new kinds of work-based learning opportunities so that they can be more equitably available to learners.
Got it. And Judy, you mentioned one, so I'll stay there and talk a little bit about challenges. You mentioned the presence of AI. Susie, thinking about challenges, what's something that comes to mind for you as an intermediary? Something either you overcame or something currently dealing with or initially you dealt with as we think about some of the challenges and then obviously next some of the solutions.
Right. So from a business's perspective, obviously businesses are looking for access to interested and pre-qualified or qualified talent, right? And as in all organizations, businesses can run lean, so they may not have an appropriate or selected person on staff to be able to run a program. So I think that is definitely a challenge. From a chamber's perspective, I think recruiting the right business partner to stand up a challenge is crucial. Knowing your priority sectors in your community, where are jobs coming up, and being able to build relationships with those companies and recruiting them to become a part of this process is important. Another challenge that we found really interesting was the difference in cultures between business and education, right? And as a Chamber of Commerce, working as that intermediary, it was so interesting and actually crucial for us to be able to act in that middle person role, to be able to speak the language of business and also speak the language of education and bring them together.
Got it. And Judy, I'll come back to you, and then I'll close out with you, Susie. Thinking about some of the solutions, can you point to any approaches that may have been successful as we think about like what are some of the solutions for some of these challenges?
Sure. We've learned a lot over the years, so things that are solutions or secret sauce, if you will. First of all, we believe strongly that work-based learning experiences have to be intentionally designed and not left to chance. So, big picture, it is important that the companies that you work with define the challenge so that it is business relevant for them. But at the same time, as an intermediary, we jump in and we oversee and we monitor and we coach companies to make sure that the challenge, the project that they're giving to the students is both relevant in terms of how it will appear on their resumes, but is also doable. The second thing that we think is an important success factor is that we believe that immersion in the company's business is actually a differentiator and is an important variable in a work-based experience as opposed to one that's more arm's length. It's interacting with working professionals as you're working through a project that actually builds those durable skills that you've heard referred to before, and not just the technical skills, but it also prepares the student to be able to do what hiring managers tell us is the single most important thing on a interview, and that is to be able to talk about their work-based learning experience, not in terms of what they did, but why it was important, what business value it delivered, and what they learned in the process. And being immersed with working professionals as part of the experience is how you develop that. The last thing I'll mention is part of our secret sauce is that all of our work-based learning experiences are small cohort-based. That is, we put students into these applied learning experiences in groups of 3 to 5. And it turns out that that's actually significantly easier for both sides of the equation. It's much better for students. It's easier for them to depend on each other and work as a group and as a team, which is what the real world is about. It's also much easier for employers to be able to give a project to a small group of students and let them go off and figure out how to solve that problem on their own than it is to manage a single intern or a single apprentice on their own. The last thing I'll say is that the truth of the matter is that intermediaries are infrastructure, not overhead. Which means in order to be successful, you have to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work to make it easier for companies to engage and not create a new business problem for them. In our case, it means find the students, vet the students, prepare the students, scaffold the companies, set up the metrics, and so forth. That's what we call sort of a programmatic package that reduces friction as opposed to introducing a new business problem for the corporate partners.
Got it. That's great. And Susie, I'll put the pressure on you to close us out on this part of the conversation. So I'll pose the same to you, thinking about, I know you've mentioned getting access to qualified workers as being one of the challenges. Anything else we should be thinking about in terms of creative approaches or success around some of those challenges?
Right. Well, so firstly, I do agree with Judy also on that, you really have to set everyone involved up for success. And as chambers of commerce, I feel that we are the connectors, we are the conveners, and it's our responsibility to be the champions of work-based learning in our communities. One of the solutions that we had, and when we started our program before that, we developed a workforce kind of stakeholders committee, which brought, first of all, we brought our education partners and our nonprofits that support our youth into the conversation. Then we brought our business partners, or eligible businesses that we thought would be good partners to this program. We convened them in the same room to talk about our particular community and what was needed. And that's, I felt like that was really the first step. That's something that everyone can do, any community. It doesn't take money or a lot of time to bring people together. So I feel like that is a really viable solution for any community to get started.
That's right. That's a great place to end it. Thanks so much for being here, Judy. Thank you so much for being here. And the last part of our conversation, to close out today's full conversation, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the barriers as well as some of the solutions. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm joined by Liz and Laura yet again. I want to get into the barriers and solutions conversation. We kind of got into it a little bit there, talking about intermediaries, but I want to go a little bit further. Laura, I'll come to you first. Thinking about work-based learning. So the data has clearly shown it's working. It's something that can be successful. We've seen success stories from learners that have went through work-based learning programs. But we've also, again, coming back to the challenges, seen some of the challenges for employers. I guess what's getting in the way? What are some of those barriers for all involved as we talk about work-based learning?
Yeah, well, I think you mentioned it in your opening remarks, a survey through Business Higher Education Forum that really asked employers what was getting in the way, and also asked them sort of what are their motivations for work-based learning. And the majority, when thinking about barriers, what's in the way of standing up or scaling work-based learning, cited the operations, like the startup costs, basically, right? How do I, structure the right program? Who do I partner with? The answers to those questions are not obvious to most companies, right? And it can be a crowded marketplace of possible partners and possible, design parameters for the models of work-based learning that we talked about. So I think this is, partly why we think the role of intermediaries is important, is to sort of demystify and simplify, what are the potential paths for you as a company, which one makes the most sense, and to be that trusted partner that can make it easier. The other point I would make around barriers more broadly, if we think about higher education institutions, I think we have a little bit of a data challenge right now around just simply knowing who is getting work-based learning experiences and who isn't. And this is something I think more and more institutions are trying to track and measure and figure out, what percentage of their students are actually participating in different types of work-based learning. And I think if you don't know the answer to that question, it's hard to strategize, right? And to figure out, is it just in a few departments, or is this actually a major challenge for us across our entire student body? So the other push I think we need to make as a field is like better data collection, better tracking of participation in work-based learning, probably in K-12 as well as post-secondary, so that we can figure out where we need to actually grow the supply of opportunities.
Got it. Now, I know this sounds like a simple question, and I know it's way more complex than what I'll ask, but how do we get more employers offering work-based learning opportunities for learners?
Yeah. Well, I love the comments from the fantastic intermediaries previously that talked about business value and business need. And I do think it sort of needs to start there, right? When we think about the longevity and sustainability of something like an internship program or an apprenticeship program, at the end of the day, if it's not delivering business value, and that can be defined in many ways, right? That can be conversion to entry-level workforce and pipeline. That can also be more intangible benefits, like helping your incumbent workforce develop management skills, or bringing in new ideas and innovation from the next generation into your workforce. But I think we have to start and anchor in what is the value that this is creating for this industry or this set of companies, and do maybe a better job telling that story and helping companies tap into that value and think about what they are driven by in their business needs and talent needs that is going to make this go beyond a one-time investment or a one-time pilot and into something that's just part of how they do business.
Got it. Now, Liz, I know we talked earlier, Laura and I, about intermediaries, but I wanted to kind of get your perspective on it. So what do you think in terms of the role of intermediaries? How do you feel about the importance of having intermediaries when we talk about work-based learning?
Absolutely essential. We know that intermediaries are incredibly important for making sure that they speak both languages of both employers and the K-12 system. When you are a deep expert in the K-12 setting, or if you are in an industry trying to figure out your talent development strategy, you do not always have the time or the bandwidth to figure out how to connect those systems. So intermediaries are playing an incredibly important and essential role in making sure that they are meeting both where they're at. If you're not prepared to offer an internship program, no problem. Maybe it's something that's project-based. If you K-12 are not interested in doing a career day, no problem. Maybe we get you set up with a different type of opportunity. Intermediaries are the ones, they're the connective tissue of this work-based learning project.
Got it. Now, you've been a champion of some of our work with EPIC. Give us a little bit of a success story. Like, what have you seen from EPIC that's been eye-opening, or has it just been a success in terms of like how we've stood up certain work-based learning programs and how the program in general has been going?
We love EPIC, and again, longtime supporters over at Britebound here with the U.S. Chamber Foundation. The reason that we think EPIC is such a valuable and important model in the field right now is because, like I said before, it is meeting people where they're at. If you as an employer are not ready to offer an internship program, and our data shows us that about 28% of employers say that they are very unlikely to offer an internship program. If you're not ready for that, then why don't we give a real problem of practice that you're currently experiencing to a group of young people? That is a win-win. It is giving young people exposure and opportunity to get to know an individual business or industry. It's giving business and industry an opportunity to dive deep with young people who may ultimately decide to opt into that type of workforce. So again, what we've seen from EPIC is I think exactly what we're hoping more people will do and adopt. It is work-based learning at scale in the way how they need it when they need it.
Got it. Now, Laura, we've talked a lot about intermediaries so far today. I know we have a cross-section of folks like watching today in the audience, varying levels of experience with work-based learning, different areas, focused on different areas of work-based learning. What are we forgetting is there anything else we should be thinking about, any other entity we should be thinking about, and especially considering, like we've talked about the importance of employers and intermediaries, but is there anything else, any other piece there we're forgetting?
Yeah, and I saw some of the survey results of our listeners, and I think a lot of people listening are very familiar with work-based learning and actually have a great deal of experience. So the one sort of entity that we haven't talked much about that I think matters a lot is states and state agencies, governors. I think there's a lot of power in a state ambition around work-based learning and setting an agenda and prioritization, and that can include legislation and allocation of resources, or it can be creating space, and convening higher ed and employers to come together. But I think state leadership is increasingly important in, again, prioritizing work-based learning across all of the stakeholders that are needed to bring it to scale. And I think we're seeing a lot of examples of state leadership. So Maryland is really leaning into apprenticeship. Virginia has a really ambitious goal around all post-secondary students participating in work-based learning. Colorado, the list goes on and on. But I think, again, it's really about setting an agenda and setting an ambitious goal across the state, and then creating the kind of conditions to enable partnership and scale.
Okay. Now, I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I want to take maybe 90 seconds and quickly kind of go through thinking about some of the barriers that we've talked about, and then kind of ending on some of the solutions, either some that we didn't get a chance to kind of go a little bit further into, or some we haven't mentioned yet. So Liz, I'll start with you. Thinking about, we've kind of talked about some of the barriers. So what about some of the solutions that might be good for folks to know?
I think one really important place to start is the voice of young people themselves, right? What are young people saying about these types of opportunities? We know that when we survey young people, 79% of our students want work-based learning experiences, that they know that it is vital for their future, especially an AI-enabled future. However, about 34% are aware of how they can actually access them. So I think that this awareness piece and listening to young people are two really ripe opportunities for a solution here. Making sure that our young people are aware of different types of work-based learning. Like we heard before, it's not just internships or apprenticeships, it's project-based learning, it's career days, it's shadowing. There are so many types of, again, learning that connects traditional K-12 settings to the real world. Making sure that our young people are aware of those through different mechanisms, that's a really easy solution to make sure that more are participating in the ways that they're clearly asking for.
That's great. Laura, what about you?
So we've talked about intermediaries as a solution. We've talked a little bit about data collection. I think one that I would add is technology, and just the role of technology in facilitating scale. And so I think Epic partners with Ripen, if I'm not mistaken. So a great example of a innovative marketplace that is aggregating projects and employer opportunities, and connecting those opportunities to students. I think we're seeing, a kind of growth in those kinds of marketplaces. There's Handshake is one that's obviously been around for a while, but seeing some innovative partnership between those platforms, the technology providers, and states, for example, and or local jurisdictions, to try to bring the technology into a school district or a higher education system to really enable scale. So that's the other piece. I think the ed tech solutions in work-based learning are growing and showing a lot of promise, and that would be another recommendation to really think about how do we use these platforms, these marketplaces that exist to meet the needs of both employers and learners.
Okay, so I'm going to try to play forum moderator right now. All right, we have a couple audience questions, so I want to try to get to a couple before we close out, and
Great.
I'll open it up to both of you. So first question from the audience: How can project or work-based learning experiences be brought into the classroom so that it benefits other students?
Take a crack at that one. So I think that we talked about solutions before and how can we bring in additional experiences. One thing is additional capacity. When we survey our counselors, about 45% say that there is some other individual in the school building or district that's supporting young people and them with access to career-connected learning, right, broadly. And when we actually profile them, they say 93% of those counselors who have someone supporting them think that that's actually improved student outcomes, not just academically, but also in terms of their long-term kind of positioning in the world. So we know that when we have additional supports within school buildings, expanding access to work-based learning and making sure that young people are aware of it, counselors, parents, and teachers are aware of work-based learning, that we're seeing those effects multiply, right? So I think that back to awareness, that's one big piece of it, but also how do we get it in the classroom? Bring it into the classroom. Get some additional people to help you figure out what is the right fit for your content, for your subject area, for your grade level.
And I think in the post-secondary context, faculty, right? So how do we help faculty and give professional development to embed those projects into curriculum and into courses? We have a project right now with a consortium of about 20 higher education institutions and Ripen, where a lot of the project is focused on faculty training and awareness and helping them figure out how does this employer project fit into the goals of my learning objectives of my course, and how do I embed it in a way that's going to strengthen the learning environment for students. But that doesn't just happen overnight, right? That requires time and, again, professional development and orientation among faculty who maybe haven't in the past had an emphasis on work-based learning. So I think teachers, faculty need those resources.
Great answers. Okay, I'm gonna try to get in one more. One more. I like this question because I think it speaks a little bit to the opportunity component. How can work-based learning be made more accessible to students who are parents or working full-time?
Well, so I love this question because we know that so many students are working full-time or part-time. And so I think we've got to be flexible on the design of work-based learning models. And one of the things that's exciting about the growth of apprenticeship is it is a job, right, at the start. It is a full-time job that can then increasingly now lead to credentials, even degrees, that are sort of the culmination of that apprenticeship. And so that's one model that I think can work really well for learners who are working and need to have a full-time job. On the other side of the spectrum, we have projects and short dose, microdose experiences that can be done virtually, that can be done at night, that can be flexible in the design. But I think we have to sort of internalize the lifestyle of many of our learners to design around that, and what worked 10 years ago might not work for that environment. So I think it's about flexible design, really.
That's great. Liz, anything else for you?
I would completely agree. I think that, again, when we think about the types of students that are now trying to experience the world of work, it is no longer that traditional student, right? Again, when we think about it, we know that we're not just talking about students who might have families at home who are actually trying to, again, have careers while going to school. We're also thinking about students who have disabilities or multilingual learners. And flexibility is so important for making sure that all students, regardless of their kind of defining characteristic, that they're able to access opportunities to engage meaningfully and tangibly with real-world learning. So flexibility is 100%, I think, the name of the game.
Way to end it.
Yeah.
Liz, Laura, thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate you taking some time and being here to have this conversation.
Thank you so much. Great conversation.
Wonderful.
And thank you to all of our speakers for today's insights. And I guess we can say today's message is clear. Work-based learning works, but employers need support to get started and grow. Intermediaries help bridge the gap between education and industry. They also reduce risk, build capacity, and unlock employer value. Now, we've shared some resources today that hopefully you can take the next step using, and we encourage you to explore them and stay engaged. Now, if you're interested in learning more about our Chamber Foundation workforce programs and initiatives, visit uschamberfoundation.org. Thanks again for joining us for today's conversation. Have a great afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.